Tonight you'll hear 3 true horror stories, chilling encounters from the dark corners of reality. Turn off the lights and listen closely. If you love real scary stories, make sure to subscribe and join us for more tales that will keep you awake at night. We start with the first story. It started subtly, a faint sound I almost dismissed as the wind. I live alone, out in the countryside, where the nearest neighbor is a good mile down a winding dirt road. The silence out here is profound, almost a living thing. So, when a new sound breaks it, you notice it was a scratching, a light, hesitant scratching against the glass of my bedroom window. I remember rolling over in bed, pulling the covers tighter around my shoulders, and telling myself it was just a tree branch. We'd had a storm roll through a few days prior, and it was probably a loose twig tapping against the pane. Plausible, simple, except the nearest tree to my bedroom window is a good 20 feet away. Its branches couldn't reach, not even in the strongest gale. The next night, it happened again, a little louder this time. Scrape, scrape, a deliberate, rhythmic sound, not the random patter of a branch. My heart started thumping against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the vast quiet of the house. I lay frozen, my eyes wide open in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Every horror movie cliché I'd ever scoffed at suddenly felt terrifyingly real. My logical mind was racing, trying to find an explanation. A raccoon, a bird. But the sound was too methodical. It had an intelligence to it that made my skin crawl. I finally mustered the courage to get out of bed, my feet cold on the wooden floor. I crept toward the window, my breath held tight in my chest. The scratching stopped the moment my hand touched the curtain. Silence, absolute, deafening silence. I waited, my ears straining. Nothing. With a trembling hand, I pulled the curtain back just a fraction of an inch. Outside, the moonlight washed over the empty yard. No animals, no people. Nothing but the familiar shapes of the trees and the long, dark shadows they cast. I spent the rest of the night with the lights on, jumping at every creak and groan of the old house. Sleep was impossible. By morning, exhausted and bleary-eyed, I convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Stress, an overactive imagination fueled by solitude. I went about my day, determined to forget it. I even went outside and inspected the window. There were no marks, no scratches on the glass, no footprints in the soft earth below. It was pristine. See, I told myself, nothing. But that night it returned, and it was worse. The scratching was no longer hesitant. It was demanding. Scraroop drag, scraroop drag. It was the sound of something sharp and hard being deliberately pulled across the glass. A sound that grated on my nerves and sent shivers down my spine. It was accompanied by a new sound. This time, a low, wet, breathing sound, just on the other side of the pane. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by a fear so pure and absolute, it felt like ice flooding my veins. My mind was screaming at me to run, to get out of the house. But my body wouldn't obey. I could only lie there, listening, imagining what kind of creature could make such a sound. The breathing was ragged, labored, as if it was struggling to draw air into its lungs, and beneath it, the relentless, rhythmic scraping. This went on for what felt like an eternity. Then, a new sound, a soft, wet thud against the glass. Thud, thud. It was tapping now, but not with a knuckle. It sounded soft, fleshy. I clamped my hands over my ears, squeezing my eyes shut, trying to block it out. "Go away," I whispered into my pillow, the words barely a breath. "Please, just go away." And then, silence. A sudden, complete stop. The absence of the noise was almost as jarring as the noise itself. I lay there for a long time, listening to the frantic beat of my own heart. Did it work? Was it gone? Minutes stretched into an hour. The silence held. Cautiously, I sat up. The first hint of dawn was painting the eastern sky in shades of gray and purple. The night was over. I didn't sleep for the next 2 days. I drank pot after pot of coffee, keeping every light in the house blazing, the TV on for background noise. I thought about leaving, about packing a bag and driving to a hotel in the city. But where would I go? What would I say? "I'm sorry, I have to check in because something is scratching at my window." They'd think I was crazy, and a part of me, the rational part, still clung to the hope that there was a logical explanation. On the third night of my self-imposed vigil, I was sitting in the living room, armed with a heavy fireplace poker, when I heard it again. But this time, it wasn't coming from my bedroom. It was coming from the kitchen. Scrape, scrape, scrape on the kitchen window, the one that looks out over the dense woods behind the house. My blood ran cold. It was moving. It was testing the windows, one by one. I gripped the poker so hard my knuckles turned white. I crept down the hallway, my bare feet making no sound on the old floorboards. As I neared the kitchen doorway, the scratching stopped. I held my breath, peering around the frame. The kitchen was dark, save for the pale moonlight filtering through the window. And then I saw it, a smudge on the glass, a greasy handprint, except the fingers were too long, far too long and thin, like the legs of a spider. And at the tip of each finger, a small, dark point, like a claw, had left a faint, arcing scratch mark on the pane. My breath hitched in my throat. I stumbled backward, a strangled gasp escaping my lips. The sound, however small, was enough. A furious scrabbling erupted at the window, a frantic, desperate sound, as if it knew I was there, as if it was enraged that I had seen it. It was no longer just scratching. It was clawing, gouging at the glass, the sound sharp and piercing. I turned and ran. I didn't grab my keys, my wallet, or my phone. I just ran. I burst out the front door and into the cold night air, not daring to look back. I ran down the long dirt driveway, my lungs burning, my feet pounding against the earth. I did unstop running until the gravel turned to pavement, and I saw the distant headlights of a car. I never went back to that house. I left everything behind. I reported a break-in to the police, but of course they found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, nothing missing. The long scratches on the kitchen window were the only evidence, and they dismissed them as being caused by an animal. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw. Sometimes, even now, in my new apartment in the middle of the bustling city, I wake up in the middle of the night. I lie in the dark, listening to the sounds of traffic and sirens, and I think I hear it, a faint, distant scratching. And I wonder if it's just my memory, or if it's still looking for me. Now, the second story. Have you ever driven down a deserted country road late at night? The kind where the only light for miles is your headlights cutting through an ocean of darkness. It feels like you've entered another world, a place where the familiar rules don't seem to apply. Now, imagine being a rural sheriff, and that spooky, isolated road is your regular beat. Tonight, we're rediving into some of the most chilling and inexplicable encounters reported by the brave men and women who patrol America's forgotten highways and deep woods. These aren't your typical city cop stories. Out here, things get weird. Let's start with a story from a deputy in rural Appalachia. We'll call him Deputy Miller. He was responding to a call about strange lights seen near an old, abandoned mining complex. This place had been shuttered for decades, a local legend whispered about by kids and avoided by adults. As Miller pulled up, his patrol car's headlights illuminated the decaying structures, casting long, dancing shadows. The air was dead still. He got out, flashlight in hand, the only sound the crunch of gravel under his boots. As he approached the main building, he heard Italo, rhythmic humming sound. It wasn't mechanical, more like a deep, guttural chant coming from within the dark, skeletal frame of the mine. Miller called out, announcing himself, but the humming just stopped. Suddenly, an overwhelming silence fell, heavier than before. He pushed open a rusted metal door, and his flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a vast, empty chamber. Dust motes danced in the light. There was nothing there. No people, no equipment, nothing that could have made the sound. But then, his light caught something on the far wall. Scrawled in what looked like mud were strange, intricate symbols he'd never seen before. They weren't from any language he knew. Just as he was trying to make sense of it, a loud bang echoed from deep within the mine shafts, like a massive metal door slamming shut. Miller backed out slowly, his hand on his sidearm. He never found the source of the noise or the humming, and the symbols were gone when a backup unit arrived the next morning. It was as if the mine itself had a secret it wasn't willing to share. Our next account takes us to the vast, flat plains of the Midwest. A seasoned sheriff was doing his final patrol of the night, driving along a stretch of highway bordered by endless cornfields. The stalks were high, creating a dense wall on either side of the road. It was just after 2 a.m. when he saw it, a figure standing motionless in the middle of the road. He slowed down, his heart starting to pound. It was a woman, dressed in what looked like a simple, old-fashioned white dress. Her back was to him. He pulled up, rolling down his window. "Ma'am, are you all right? You can't be standing in the middle of the road." She didn't move. He called out again, a little louder. Slowly, unnervingly, she began to turn. He said her movements were jerky, unnatural, like a puppet on strings. As her face came into view, illuminated by his dashboard lights, he froze. She had no eyes, just smooth, uninterrupted skin where her eyes should have been. Her mouth opened into a silent, gaping scream. The sheriff slammed his foot on the gas, swerving around her and speeding away without looking back. He glanced in his rearview mirror, his hands shaking, but the road behind him was completely empty. He drove straight back to the station and told his dispatch he was done for the night. He'd patrolled that same road for 20 years and had never seen anything like it. He never did again, but he said he always felt a chill whenever he had to drive past that particular stretch of cornfield. Now, let's head to the swampy bayous of Louisiana. A rookie deputy was responding to a welfare check on an old trapper who lived deep in the swamp, miles from any paved road. The old man hadn't been seen in town for weeks, and folks were getting worried. The deputy had to leave his vehicle and take a small, flat-bottomed boat the rest of the way, following a barely there channel through the cypress trees. The air was thick and humid, buzzing with insects. As he approached the dilapidated shack, he noticed something was off. It was too quiet. No dogs barking, no sign of life. He tied up his boat and cautiously made his way to the cabin. The door was slightly ajar. Sheriff's department. He called out, "Anyone home?" Only silence answered. He pushed the door open and was hit by the musty smell of decay. The inside was a mess, but it was the floor that caught his attention. There were large, wet footprints leading from the back door, through the main room, and out the front. But these weren't human footprints. They were long-webbed and had 3 distinct claw-like toes. They looked almost reptilian. The deputy followed the tracks outside, where they led directly to the edge of the water and disappeared. There was no sign of the old trapper, no signs of a struggle. It was as if he'd simply been visited by something from the swamp and then vanished. The old man was never seen again, and the case remains one of the strangest unsolved disappearances in the parish's history. From the swamp, we journey to the high deserts of the Southwest. This story comes from a tribal police officer on a sprawling reservation. He was investigating reports of livestock going missing from a remote ranch. Not just 1 or 2, but a dozen sheep had vanished overnight without a trace. When the officer arrived, he found the rancher in a state of panic. The fence was intact, and there were no signs of predators like coyotes or mountain lions. The only clue was a set of bizarre tracks near the empty pen. They were large, hoof-like prints, but they were bipedal with 2 legs. The stride between them was impossibly long, almost 10 feet apart. The officer, a local man who knew the land and its legends, felt a knot form in his stomach. He decided to follow the tracks, which led him out into the rocky, barren landscape. As dusk began to settle, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the tracks led him to the mouth of a small, dark cave. A foul, musky odor emanated from within. He drew his weapon, his flashlight cutting a nervous path into the darkness. From the depths of the cave, he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. It was a high-pitched shriek, a mix between a wail and a hiss, and it echoed off the rock walls. Then he saw them. Two glowing red eyes blinked open in the darkness, about 8 feet off the ground. He didn't wait to see what they were attached to. He turned and ran, not stopping until he was back in his truck, speeding away. The next day, he told the rancher the sheep were gone for good and advised him to move the rest of his flock closer to the house. Some things that wander the desert are best left alone. For our final story, we go to the dense, foggy forests of the Pacific Northwest. A deputy was called out to a logging road that had been blocked by a fallen tree. It was a common enough call after a storm, but this one felt different. The fog was so thick he could barely see 10 feet in front of his vehicle. He got out with a chainsaw from his trunk, the sound of the engine roaring to life and then immediately being swallowed by the oppressive fog. As he started cutting into the massive trunk, he got the distinct feeling he was being watched. He'd learned to trust that feeling over his years on the force. He paused the saw and listened. Nothing, just the dripping of water from the enormous pine trees surrounding him. He went back to work, but the feeling intensified. It felt like something was just at the edge of his vision, moving in the periphery. He finished the cut and was pushing the heavy log section aside when he saw them. Carved into the other side of the tree, the side that had been facing into the woods, were faces, dozens of them. They were grotesque, with twisted expressions of pain and anger. It wasn't graffiti. The carvings were old, weathered, as if they'd been a part of the tree for a very long time. Who would do this deep in the forest, on a tree that was still standing? Suddenly, a branch snapped loudly in the woods nearby. That was enough for him. He threw his gear in the trunk and got out of there. The carved faces burned into his memory. He later learned that area of the forest was considered cursed by local tribes, a place where spirits lingered. He never took a call on that road alone again. From strange lights and disembodied sounds to eyeless figures and creatures of legend. The life of a rural officer is anything but predictable. They patrol the lonely places where the modern world fades away and something much, much older seems to wait in the shadows. What do you think? Are these just tall tales, or is there something genuinely unsettling lurking in the quiet corners of our country? Let me know your own spooky stories from deserted roads in the comments below. This is the last story. The flickering candlelight casts long, dancing shadows across my face, and the air is thick with the sweet, cloying scent of wax and something else, something coppery and metallic. I shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here. But you need to know the truth about Mr. Abernathy, the town's beloved candlemaker. Everyone sees him as this quaint, gentle old man, with his kind eyes and hands always stained with colorful dyes. His shop, the Gilded Wick, is a local treasure, a place of warmth and comfort. But that warmth is a lie. It's a carefully crafted illusion, just like his beautiful, intricate candles. My name is Leo, and I used to work for him. I was just a kid looking for a summer job, and Abernathy's shop seemed perfect. A noble craft, he'd say, his voice a low, soothing rumble. We're not just making candles, Leo. We're capturing moments, bottling memories. It sounded poetic, enchanting. I bought into it, every word. I learned to mix the waxes, to choose the wicks, to blend the fragrances: vanilla, lavender, sandalwood. But there was one collection I was never allowed to touch: the Crimson Collection. These candles were different. They weren't sold in the main shop. They were kept in the back, in a small, windowless room that was always kept locked. They were a deep, unsettling shade of red, almost black in the dim light, and they didn't smell of flowers or spices. They had a strange, organic scent that I couldn't quite place. Abernathy was secretive about them, saying they were for special clients who appreciated the rarer things in life. The price tags on them were astronomical, and people paid without question. Wealthy, pale-faced individuals would arrive after dark, their cars silent and sleek, and leave with a single, heavy candle, their expressions unreadable. My curiosity started to gnaw at me. What was so special about these candles? Why the secrecy? One afternoon, when Mr. Abernathy left for a rare supply run to the city, he forgot his keys. The small, ornate iron key to the back room was on the ring. My heart pounded in my chest. This was my chance. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was betraying his trust, but the pull of the mystery was too strong. My hand trembled as I unlocked the door. The smell hit me first. It was the familiar scent of the Crimson Collection, but 100 times stronger, mixed with the sharp, sterile smell of bleach. The room was small, its walls lined with shelves holding dozens of the identical red candles. In the center of the room was a heavy wooden table, its surface stained and scarred. But it was what was under the table that made my blood run cold. A large, industrial-grade meat grinder, and next to it, several large, red-stained buckets. I felt a wave of nausea, the sweet smell of the candles suddenly becoming sickening. Why would a candle maker need a meat grinder? I backed away, my mind racing, trying to find a rational explanation. Maybe he made his own tallow, but from what? That's when my eyes caught something glinting on the floor near the grinder. I knelt, my fingers tracing the outline of a small silver earring. One I recognized. It belonged to a young woman, a tourist, who had been reported missing a few weeks ago. She had visited the shop. I remembered her. She'd been enchanted by Abernathy's stories. I remember him looking at her with an intensity that, at the time, I mistook for charm. Now, I saw it for what it was. Assessment. Predation. I stumbled out of the room, locking the door and trying to compose myself before Abernathy returned. But the pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture so grotesque I could barely comprehend it. The missing people from our town and the surrounding areas over the years. It was always the drifters, the tourists, the ones no one would miss right away. Abernathy, the kind, gentle old man, wasn't just a candle maker. He was a hunter. I started digging late at night, going through old town records, online archive. The pattern was undeniable. A disappearance, followed by a new batch of the Crimson Collection for his special clients. He wasn't just capturing memories, he was capturing lives. The coppery smell, the organic scent, the deep red color. It wasn't a rare flower or an exotic spice. It was blood. The candles were made with human fat. The wicks, I suspected, were spun from something just as macabre. He was rendering people down, turning them into luxury items for a clientele who knew exactly what they were buying. They weren't just buying candles. They were buying a piece of a life, a final, flickering essence. I had to expose him, but how? Going to the police with a story about blood candles and a meat grinder. They'd think I was crazy. The sheriff was one of Abernathy's oldest friends. I needed proof, undeniable proof. That's what led me back here, to the shop in the dead of night. I needed to get one of those candles to a lab to get it tested. I'm recording this now, in case I don't make it out. In case he finds me. The floorboards creak above me. He's here. I'm hiding in the cellar, surrounded by boxes of paraffin and old molds. The air is cold, but sweat is pouring down my back. I can hear him moving around, slow, methodical. He's not the frail old man he pretends to be. There's a strength in his footsteps, a purpose. He's not human, not in the way that matters. A monster wearing a human face. I can hear him coming down the stairs. The scent is getting stronger. He's carrying one of the candles. Its light throws his shadow against the wall, making him look like a giant. His voice, that same soothing rumble, cuts through the silence. Leo, I know you're down here. Did you think I wouldn't know? The balance was disturbed. You disturbed the artistry, my boy. His footsteps are on the last step. There's nowhere to run. The candlelight illuminates his face, and his kind eyes are gone. In their place is something ancient and hungry. People are just vessels. Leo, he whispers, full of fleeting moments. All I do is give them permanence. A beautiful, fragrant, final flame. A true work of art. He takes a step closer. The flame dances, and for a second, I think I can see a face screaming within the wax. This is it. If you're watching this, don't let him get away with it. Don't let their light go out in silence. Tell everyone the secret of the candlemaker. Thank you for watching. Please be careful who you trust. The most charming faces can hide the darkest secrets. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories. Stay safe out there.